BookTube, Sarah here, and welcome to my channel. Today I'm coming to you with my weekly reviews for September the 1st through the 7th. So we have 4 books to talk about this week. As per usual, I will leave timestamps in the description box below if you want to jump to the review of a certain book and, that's the one you're interested in hearing about and you're not so interested in hearing about other ones. So that's why I do timestamp these below. So, 4 books. The first one that I finished was The Deception by Kat Martin. This is book number 2 in the Maximum Security series, and it is, of course, a romantic suspense novel. This is being published on September the 10th, so this coming Tuesday it comes out. And special thanks to NetGalley and to the publisher Harlequin for sending me an e-copy of this book to review. I gave this one 4 stars. I really did enjoy it. So this is the story of Jace and Kate. Took me a second, Jace and Kate. But he actually goes by the name Hawk throughout. Actually, it was a little confusing at certain points because he goes by not only Jace, but Hawk and Jason as well. Like Jason's his full name. So, sometimes when a character has one nickname, it's fine. But when you're starting to add 2 different nicknames into the mix, it gets to be a little bit much. But c'est la vie. So this is the story of Jace and Kate. And essentially the entire premise of this story is that 2 years earlier, Kate's younger sister, much younger sister, I think there's something like a 12-year age difference between them, she runs away from home and has not been heard from since. Her parents ended up separating after the sister took off, and then her mother passed away a year later. So Kate and her sister weren't exceptionally close. Her sister was quite young when Kate graduated from high school and ended up moving to Dallas, to the big city. So anyway, Kate's been kind of looking for her sister, and as the book opens, we find out that sadly her sister has been murdered. So the entire premise of the story is Kate trying to locate her sister's murderer. And she hires Jace. He works for a company called Maximum Security, which is where the series title comes from. And he takes on the case and he's trying to help find her sister. He actually works mostly as a bounty hunter, so he knows how to track people and how to search for people. So they're trying to trace back to, the 2 years since her sister left home and what happened to her and what kind of situation she got herself into that ended up with this outcome. It works into an entire sex trafficking ring with young girls and, drug dealers and a whole underbelly of society that most people don't really come into contact with, but we all hear about oftentimes on the news. It was really gripping, really interesting. It kept me guessing the whole way through on kind of what happened. This book got very, very, very hot and spicy. There is a lot of adult content in this book between Jace and Kate, of course. But that's par for the course with these kind of books. Still enjoyable, and they did keep it as mostly a physical relationship. The story does take place over quite a number of weeks, so it wasn't an insta-love kind of an idea, but they both kind of said right at the beginning that this is only going to be something while we're working together, and, then we'll part ways. And, then that time comes and feelings have started to develop, and, the story kind of goes from there in that aspect of it. But like I said, it was really, really interesting. There were a few problems that I had with it. One of them being that I thought that Kate, as someone who has absolutely no law enforcement experience, I believe it says in the book that she knows how to shoot a gun. She was taught when she was young. I guess her father used to take her to the firing range, or they lived out in the country or something like that. So she's not unfamiliar with a gun, but still, she is not, that kind of a person. But yet Jace fully allows her to come into these very dangerous situations, to meet up with pimps and drug dealers and biker bars. And I'm just thinking the liability on that is ridiculous. So I found that to be a little, you really had to stretch your imagination on that one, on whether or not, if this was a real case that some bounty hunter or private investigator was doing, whether he would let an everyday citizen follow him into these situations, regardless of how he felt. Even more so because he had feelings for this girl. Does he really want to put her in harm's way? The other thing that kind of drove me, not drove me crazy, but once I noticed it every time. It was one of those. And it was the fact of the truck. it wasn't just that Jace drove a truck and, you know, in the book, they got into the truck or they got out of the truck or they ran towards the truck or they hid behind the truck. It was the Yukon. Every time it was the brand name. It was the Yukon this, the Yukon that. And also, you know, everything that Kate was wearing, you know, it wasn't just a white shirt and jeans. It was, you know, tight jeans and a scoop neck t-shirt with blah, 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 blah. It... It got to be a little much, like with all of her outfits described to you. You know, I get it. You can just say a t-shirt and jeans and I'll figure it out. You know what I mean? And with the whole thing with the Yukon, it almost felt to me as if it was being sponsored. And if the author could fit that word into the book, you know, X number of times, then, you know, she met the sponsorship agreement or something like that. So yeah, I don't know. It just, again, once I noticed it, I could not notice it. And in a way, it reminded me of the Brooklyn Bruiser series, which I've read before. And they have these phones that were developed by some tech mogul who works with this hockey team. And they're called cat phones, C-A-T, cat phones. And it wasn't just that so-and-so picked up their cell phone, it was that they picked up their cat phone. And it was the same thing. Once you've heard it once and you've heard it once or twice, then you hear it every single time. Maybe that's just me. So yeah, but I mean, those are very, very minor things. They didn't take away from the story at all for me. I still really, really enjoyed it. I absolutely recommend it. I definitely plan on going back and reading the first book in the series. And because you kind of got a hint at the first two characters, you kind of know how their story ends in a way, like their relationship. But with these romantic suspense novels, it's almost more about the mystery. It's just as much about the mystery as it is about the relationship between the two characters. So it's totally worth my while to go back and read the first book, and absolutely for you guys too if you enjoy romantic suspense novels. So the next book that I finished this week, oh my gosh, you guys, this one was so good. Hanging Mary by Susan Higginbotham. This is a historical fiction novel. It was narrated on audio by Joanna Parker. I borrowed this one from my library from Overdrive. This was originally published in 2016. I gave this one 4 stars, and this one I read for Romanceopoly for the Square Memory Lane, which was to read a historical fiction novel. And this book had been on my TBR for quite some time. I have a physical copy. I just didn't grab it before this video, but the picture, of course, will be up here. So the basic premise of this story, again, it's a historical fiction novel, so it's a true story to an extent. We can never know exactly what these characters said to each other. We cannot know what these characters were thinking. We can't know any of these things. She took the facts and built a story around it. So essentially, this is the story of about a woman named Mary. Mary runs a boarding house in Washington, D.C., and she is a real person. I Google searched her after I finished the book and was fascinated reading about her. She ran, like I said, this boarding house, and she had 3 children actually. Her oldest boy was serving with the Confederate Army in the Civil War, so this takes place during the Civil War, of course. And her 2 younger children, her son, was then actually, unbeknownst to her, I think, she may have known, she may not have known, again, it's a lot of speculation, that he was running blockades for the Confederates, and her daughter was still living at home, very prissy, seemed to be a little stuck up. So anyway, she runs this boarding house, and her son, who's running the blockades, befriends John Wilkes Booth. And this is the story of the assassination of President Lincoln as told from this person named Mary and this fictional character by the name of Nora. Now, Nora rents a room in this boarding house, and I think the author did that in order to give a different side of the story, not just Mary's perspective. This is told in first person. The chapters alternate between Nora and Mary. And yeah, it was fascinating. As someone who is fascinated by history, the American Civil War is something that greatly interests me, especially being Canadian. You know, we hear so much about it, and there were a lot of things that I didn't realize while I was reading this book, and things that I found very interesting. So the whole case with Mary, and I'm not giving anything away, again, this is historical fact. You could go ahead and Google search it and find out how this book ends, essentially, without ever reading the book. But Mary ends up being the first woman tried, and no, she was the first woman in the U.S. to be executed by hanging, or just in general to be executed, but she ends up being hung. Reason being is because she was convicted of being part of the Lincoln assassination plot. She was one of, we always hear about John Wilkes Booth, that he was the gunman, that he's the one who shot the president. but there were co-conspirators. There were other people who helped him carry this out. And one of those people were Mary. And as you're reading this book, you can't help but think to yourself, at least I did she really know what they claim that she knew, or did she not know? Now, saying that, she did admit to the fact that she was aware that her son and John Wilkes Booth had planned on kidnapping the president. Now, that's a federal offense. That, but whether she would have been tried and then executed for that crime, or whether she would have just spent the rest of her life in jail, remains to be seen. I mean, we will never know. But, the fact of the matter is that they claim that she knew. She went to certain places and told certain people about weapons and things like that, and that all came out in the trial. The book actually was a bit slow to get started. It dragged a little bit at the beginning. I'm glad I was reading it on audio because it just seems to be a bit easier to get through. But you're meeting the characters, and I think you needed that beginning part of it because the assassination itself doesn't actually happen until about 60% of the way through the book. And then after that, it's the trial, and then to the eventual execution. And again, you follow between Mary's point of view and Nora's point of view. And Nora is quite good friends with Mary's daughter. So, like I said, I learned a lot of things that I didn't know before. What I didn't know so much was exactly how famous John Wilkes Booth was in his day. I did not realize, I knew he was a stage actor, but I guess because the fact of him being, the person who assassinated President Lincoln, that's what he's known as. I mean, you're not going to say, oh, but he was also a fantastic actor. But, as you're reading the lead up to the assassination, you're hearing about what an amazing actor he was and how well loved by so many people he was. Girls had his picture in their photo albums, much like we would do that with celebrities now. I mean, in his time, he was a very famous celebrity, and I didn't realize that. And that kind of put an entire new perspective on the entire assassination thing, the entire assassination of the president in my mind, because I can't help but think it would be like a very, very famous person doing that now. Do you know what I mean? And it kind of, it changes the way you think about these things, right? And I just found it fascinating. If you are a Civil War buff, if you enjoy a good historical fiction novel, I highly recommend that you pick this one up. When I first started listening to it on audio, I will be honest, I heard the narration. I'm like, I've heard this narrator before. She narrates the Sookie Stackhouse series by Charlene Harris, a completely different type of book. So it took me, because I've listened to the first two books in the Sookie Stackhouse series, it took me a few minutes to differentiate between. But once I was able to let go of that and just immerse myself in this book, there was no problem. The narration on this one is very, very well done. Her narration on males is really good. She has that great Southern accent. It was really, really good, guys. I cannot rave about this book enough. I really loved it. Yes, I only did give it 4 stars because, and you're gonna laugh, it's a sad book. And now that shouldn't take away from the star rating, but as good as it was, I still did feel that it dragged a bit, maybe a bit too much at the beginning, and some of that parts of it could have been let go. And a lot of what happened with Nora, I felt could have been omitted as well. So yeah, but outside of that, fantastic, fantastic book. If you can borrow it on audio, I highly recommend it. And yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. The next book that I finished this week was Marrying Dr. Maverick by Karen Rose Smith. I believe this is book 4 in the Montana Mavericks Rust Creek Cowboys series. This was published originally in 2013. Sorry, I can't read it on the side because of the spine being cracked. And of course, Silhouette Special Edition, or Harlequin Special Edition novel, number 22, what's the number? 2287. This is part of my 40 Years of Harlequin project, of course. So we're getting into 2013 already, you guys. Not too many more. And then we will be getting into all the books for this year, which is very exciting. So this is the story of Jessi and Brooks. So, as the title suggests, this is a marriage of convenience story. So Jessi is fairly new to Rust Creek, I believe, yeah, Montana, the Montana Maverick series. And at the very first book in this series, this is one of those mini-series which I really think benefits from being read in order. There are 6 of them in this mini-series, and, you know, not that I felt lost, but I definitely knew that things happened that I wasn't privy to because I didn't read the first three books. Like I said, I'm pretty sure this is book number 4. So at the beginning of this series, the town of Rust Creek suffers a devastating flood, and a lot of the town is kind of leveled. And Jessi has come in from another small town not far away called Thunder Creek, I think it's called, or Thunder Canyon or something like that. And she comes in to kind of help with the cleanup efforts. And she kind of knows Brooks from around town, but not really, because his father is also a veterinarian. Oh, Brooks is a veterinarian, I should say. Sorry, that's the doctor. He's a vet. And his father is the local vet for the small town of Rust Creek. But his dad's quite a bit older, and he has suffered some health issues, and Brooks is trying to force him to kind of slow down. And he keeps offering to, you know, let me buy out your practice. You can still work. You can still go and visit, you know, and treat some of the animals. You know, you can be our guy who goes out to see the horses and the cows, and, you know, let me run the day-to-day here at the veterinary clinic. And his dad, very, very, very stubborn. His dad believes that, you know, Brooks should be settling down and getting married. Brooks did have a girlfriend. He had a fiance, and they ended up splitting up. So his dad is very, very adamant and will not let him buy into the practice until he is settled down, because he doesn't believe that he's going to settle down, that maybe by taking a wife, it'll show that, you know, he's got the stamina to take on this responsibility, even though Brooks has been running his own veterinary practice in another town. You know, like, it's a little silly to me, the father's point of view, but you can't argue with your parents. So anyway, Brooks and Jessi is now working with Brooks, kind of helping him out, going on some of these calls, because he decided he's just going to step in and open his own vet practice in town, and, you know, take some of the business from his father, not to be a jerk, but to maybe show him, yes, it's okay to slow down, and yes, I am here to help you. So the dad and him have words, of course, many, many times they have words. And then finally, you know, Brooks is like, let's just amalgamate both practices together. And his dad's like, no, you know, you're just going to take off. And even though he's shown that he's never done that before, but that's what his father believes. So he and Jessi go into a marriage of convenience, a marriage on paper, just to show his dad that, hey, look, we're married, blah, blah, blah. But the marriage part of it doesn't happen till a good 70% of the way through the book. And then, of course, it's the relationship after the marriage and things like that. You know, it was cute. It was fun. What did I say that I gave this one? I gave it 3.5 stars. It was enjoyable. It was a quick read. You know, Karen Rose Smith, she does these really, really well. I love the small town. I do love that small town aspect, that very small town aspect in these contemporary romance stories. So yeah, it was a lot of fun, and I absolutely recommend it. And the last book that I finished this week was Jessi and the Dance School Phantom by Ann M. Martin. This is, of course, a middle grade fiction novel. It is Babysitter's Club book number 42, originally published in 1991. I gave this one 3 stars. This was not anything spectacular in the series. This was not a book that you will I remembered reading it because I read this entire series, of course, when I was much younger, but it's not one of the standout, you know, books in the series. It was a good story. So essentially this is about Jessi, who is our ballerina in the Babysitters Club, and she has gotten the lead in the Sleeping Beauty production, and someone is sending her threatening notes like beware and watch your step, and also doing rather devious things to her. They hide her toe shoes, they stole her leotard, and they cut it all up. Somebody put a wet spot on the floor, so when she was doing a jump, she slipped and almost broke her ankle. She sprained her ankle, but she could have broken her ankle. So these are very devious things, and she's trying to figure out exactly who it is who's doing it. Well, obviously it's another girl within the dance group. And, you know, you quickly realize exactly who it's going to be at the beginning, at least as an adult you do. And, you know, I applaud Jessi for trying to figure it out herself, but personally, especially after she slipped on the water, is the point where I would have said to my mom and dad, like, guess what, guys? This is what's going on. And she had all the notes still, and I would have gone to an adult. She's only 11 years old. She's one of the junior members of the Babysitters Club, so she is young. So, but I mean, the other babysitters were trying to help her and things like that. You know, again, it was cute. It was nothing groundbreaking. It was a very quick read. And yeah, I mean, again, I'm reading through the series, so not all of them are going to be great, but this one, it was enjoyable. So anyway, guys, that is everything that I read this week, all 4 books. I'm very, very pleased with them. I'm very, very happy. It was a good reading week. I especially liked Hanging Mary. So again, if that's something that sounds good to you, definitely check it out. And of course, The Deception was fantastic as well. But yeah, so anyway, guys, let me know in the comments below, what books did you read this week that you really enjoyed? Or did any of these books sound good to you? And until my next video, everybody, take care and happy reading. Thank you all so much for watching. Bye, guys.